In 2018, 16.2% of all children, which is almost 1 in every 6 children, lived in poverty in the U.S. And in 2015, the National Center on Family Homelessness found that 2.5 million children nationwide experience homelessness in a year. The United States is one of the wealthiest countries on the planet, yet we do the least for our poor people out of all developed nations. Today, I'll be discussing how the cycle of poverty, particularly for minorities, affects one's ability to move up in social class. So, how is poverty cyclical? Wealth, not ability or worth ethic, is the biggest predictor of future success. If one is born wealthy in the U.S., they are most likely going to stay wealthy. And sadly, if one is born poor, they are more likely to stay poor. Poverty is a complex issue that many scholars ascribe to what we call the cycle of poverty, which means that once a family has entered into the conditions of poverty for a certain amount of time, the realities of being impoverished make it extremely difficult to get out of that situation without help. To better understand the cycle of poverty, I'm going to tell you this fictional story in my own words I found on study.com by Christopher Moscato. Imagine a girl is born to an impoverished family who cannot afford quality medical care during the pregnancy. So the girl is born with diabetes, which is something she will have to deal with financially for the rest of her life. She grows up and attends a school in her poor neighborhood. And due to the lower quality of education, sex ed classes are inaccurate, and she ends up pregnant at 16. Now she has a child without a car or a diploma, so she must find a job, which will be low wage, within the radius of public transportation. She will have daycare costs for her child and will eventually also become responsible for her parents, whose health is failing due to a lifetime of eating low-quality foods. She wants to go to college, but can't because she is paying for her own medical issues, her child, and her parents. Her child will be raised in a similar situation, and therefore the cycle of poverty continues. What should be done to help individuals stuck in the cycle of poverty? Education breaks the cycle of poverty. If higher education was more accessible and affordable, people that were born into constraining environments can get college degrees that will get them high-wage jobs and help them escape the cycle of poverty. Furthermore, education will make workers advocate for themselves and make them less susceptible of getting taken advantage of. The cost of living has continued to increase while the minimum wage has not. Back in the 70s, a minimum wage job could support a family of 4. Now, at the current federal minimum wage level, people working full-time cannot afford to feed their families and pay the bills. Raising the minimum wage could help low-wage workers and their families access medical coverage and afford the basic necessities to live. Housing is less affordable for many families today than it was 20 years ago. Households that dedicate a large portion of their income to housing may not have enough left over to cover the cost of living. If housing was more affordable, there would be less people on the streets, and people could devote more of their income to things like health care, healthy foods, and transportation. If nothing is done to change things, more families will continue to suffer as the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The crime rate could also possibly increase. The shares of adults in the lower and upper income tiers have increased as the middle class share has decreased. If this continues to happen, one day the middle class will disappear and there will only be a few rich people while everyone else remains poor. As long as the cost of living continues to rise while wages stay stagnant, more and more people will continue to not have the ability to afford to live. Another potential consequence is an increase in crime. People living in poverty are just regular people who are struggling to meet their basic human needs, such as food, shelter, health, and other necessities needed to live. If one is physically unable to meet their needs and provide for their child the legal way, he or she may resort to a life of crime. Having a high crime rate would leave society a lot worse off than before. Additionally, children do not choose what family they are born into. It is not their own fault they are poor, and it should not be nearly impossible to escape poverty. As an average American citizen, you may feel powerless when it comes to changing our country. Despite what you may think, there are still many things you could do to help. You can vote for politicians that support our cause and will help pass laws that will benefit those in need. You can call Congress. Even only a few people calling in can make a congressman change their mind on a bill. You can stay informed on these issues and raise awareness. One of the easiest ways to help is to donate to charities. Even though it may not be a long-term solution, it could help people in need. Lastly, you can volunteer. There are many different things one could volunteer for to help, such as a political campaign or a nonprofit organization. I would like to close with this quote that states, "Extreme poverty anywhere is a threat to human security everywhere." Kofi Annan, 7th Secretary General of the United Nations.